everyone. Thank you for coming. I think we're going to start with a quick introduction of ourselves. My name is Ellen Song, and I recently completed my doctorate in English here at Duke. Thank you.
And I'm Allen, majoring in history.
I'm Lexi. I'm also a history major with minors in psychology and Spanish.
I'm Zara, rising sophomore, don't know my major yet.
So I'm just going to speak for 1 minute about who we are and what our goals for the summer were. We are the Allen Building Takeover at 50 team, working on the 50th commemoration of the Allen Building Takeover. So we are planning an exhibit that will go up in February of the following year. We hope all of you will go see it right on the first floor of Perkins Library. Just to give a little bit of brief historical context, Duke University desegregated its undergraduate class officially in 1963, but Black students continue to face unique challenges and alienation on a predominantly white campus. 6 years later, on February 13th, 1969, over 50 Black students, members of the Afro-American Society here at Duke, occupied the Allen Building with a list of demands, including probably most prominently the creation of an African American Studies department. What our team did was to curate an exhibit, both physically and digitally, that will focus on the day of the actual event. So starting with the morning of February 13th all the way through the evening. And they were really intent on showing the Allen Building Takeover through the perspectives of the students that were actually involved in the building, rather than through the perspective of the administration, which is usually how the Allen Building Takeover is studied. So without further ado.
So one of the two products that we had created by the end of the 6-week program was the layout for a physical exhibit. On this slide behind me, you'll see this is called a SketchUp. It's a program that the Rubenstein exhibits team uses to imagine the exhibits before we can see them in reality, because currently there's another exhibit for the gardens in the space that we will be using next February. So this is kind of what our product next February will look like. A bit of our process is that we started in the archives, going through many different collections that contain materials about the Allen Building Takeover and some of the events before and after. And from there, we compiled a list of items that we thought we might use in our exhibit. And then we came back together as a team to discuss what sections and what themes we wanted to highlight. And from there, we sort of moved into creating sections and labels that would correspond to each case that you can see in this SketchUp. Just to give you a little bit, walk you through this virtual exhibit, if you look to your far left, there is a black screen. That is a slideshow that will contain quotes from Black students who were at Duke during the process of desegregation, to sort of give visitors to our exhibit a sense of what was it like at Duke in the 60s. And moving from left to right, you'll see in the middle of that white wall is our introductory text that sort of is our statement of purpose for the exhibit. And then moving further along is a timeline of the events of the day. And that wall ends with a slideshow that contains eyewitness accounts, quotes, and images from the confrontation between police and student protesters that resulted in the police spraying tear gas onto the crowd. One of the challenges that we had to work with is that during the school year, we are all taught to think critically and analytically in the essays that we write and in the projects that we pursue. For our group, for the first time, we had to think not only visually, but also spatially. We're creating a 3-dimensional display, and that required us to consider how do people interact with text, video, pictures, audio, but also space.
And so as Lexi briefly talked about, an example of one of our sections is the police and protest section. And so the morning the members of the Afro-American Society took over the Allen Building, that afternoon President Knight called the police to help remove them from the building. And this caused a clash that after the members of the Afro-American Society had left the building, the police entered the building and came out of the building to find 1,000 supporters that were Duke students and community members there to support the Afro-American students. And so what culminated was a clash between the police and the supporters. And so in this image here that's titled "Never Again at Duke," it's a police officer standing with a gas mask and baton in hand over a supporter. And it's paired with the caption, "Never Again at Duke." This visually stunning image shows you just a glimpse of the chaos that occurred that night. And along with this in the exhibit, there will be a gas mask and a baton in a case with this poster blown up.
Yeah, so to complement our actual physical exhibit, which goes up in February, we also created an online exhibit through Omeka, which is the library's digital template they use for all the online components for their exhibits. So this is how it looks like. It follows pretty much the same format as the physical exhibit will. In February, it goes in chronological order, describing the context and the events of that day through old chronicle articles, photographs, and archival documents. And each of us were assigned different parts to complete. And so one of my sections was alumni white lash. And yeah, so before the age of Facebook and Twitter, Duke alumni wrote to the president to kind of express their opinions on certain events. And even though today we tend to memorialize the Allen Building Takeover as being positive, otherwise we wouldn't be doing this exhibit, it was incredibly controversial at the time. And these letters really express the indignation, the anger many alumni, many of them white males, expressed at Black students taking over the main administrative building on campus, like Edward J. Burns, class of 1929, who wrote to President Knight, "Duke University is a private institution and should limit its students to the best young men and women dedicated to obtaining a good education and promoting the best interests of Duke, our state and nation. I do not think that the vast majority of Negroes qualify for attending Duke in any respect. They are the principal cause of the disturbances that have taken place on the campus, and it would be better that they would be excluded from the student body entirely for many years to come. Duke was a much better institution in a number of ways before they were admitted." So clearly he would have a heart attack if he looked at Duke today.
And so we wrote curator's notes for the exhibit, Alexi, Allen, and I, which will be displayed in the exhibit. And I'm just going to read you a few lines from our notes. Although the takeover is now preserved in the archives, its impact has lasted long beyond the events of February 13, 1969. The radical actions of Duke's Black students in the late 60s set the standard for students navigating campus life in the present. Their brave actions helped to inspire future minority students to voice their concerns on a predominantly white college campus. They set a precedent for future student activists to stand up to the administration and to demand a better vision for their university. They ensured that their voices were woven into Duke history. Most importantly, they paved the way for students of all colors and backgrounds to create a space of their own on this campus. Ultimately, on February 13, 1969, Black students demanded that Duke be more than a school, more than an institution, asserting all students' rights to a family, community, and home.
As we wrap up our presentation, we wanted to thank our project sponsors, which include, if you guys could raise your hand, there's some of them in the audience, I'd appreciate that because they're in the middle row. But they were instrumental in helping us achieve the amount of work that we did. It was a lot of work and a lot of effort to create an exhibit, and it would not have been possible without their help. To wrap up, I'd just like to read a quote that was included in a retrospective published by the university in 1993 that was commemorating Black students at Duke. And this is a quote from Brenda Armstrong. She is currently part of the Duke Medical School and serves as the Dean of Diversity. But Back in 1969, she was actually one of the Black students who participated in the takeover. So, in choosing to confront Duke, we students had carved a place in history for ourselves. Our enduring legacy would be one of leadership, commitment, extraordinary academic and professional productivity. Indeed, such achievement through struggle and the ensuing myths created would be the stuff of legends. And on our shoulders would stand generations of Black students to complete their unfinished business at Duke. Thank you.